All right, it's about 8:32, so we'll get started. This is MMA's webinar on succession in the family business, a virtual roundtable discussion. Good morning and welcome. My name is Mike Johnston. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at MMA, and we appreciate you all participating in the webinar today. Let me start just for a cheerleading exercise to kind of talk a little bit about MMA. MMA represents about 1,600 members in the largest sector of the Michigan economy. Manufacturers employ 628,700 people in Michigan and generates 102.35 billion in total manufacturing output. Our members include the large iconic companies you all recognize, such as Ford, GM, Stellantis, Kellogg, Dow, US Steel, etc. But 85% of our members have 100 employees or less. And as a relevant fact for today's discussion, about 60% of our members are family owned. So let me do a little housekeeping. This is a Zoom webinar format to allow us to accommodate a lot of participants. Everyone on the call will be muted. However, we want this to be a discussion with all of you. This is intended to get your questions answered. It's all about you today. So we encourage you to send us questions during the call through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. This will be an open discussion and we'll fill the full hour. So get your questions in as they come to you throughout the discussion. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent to you within 24 hours. It'll also be available on our website at mimfg.org. So about the session very quickly. Transitioning a family-owned business from one generation to the next is a delicate balancing act with potentially long-lasting repercussions, both professionally and personally. In this virtual roundtable discussion, you'll hear from manufacturing leaders who have pulled off successful transitions that created a sustained competitive advantage, boosted customer satisfaction, and maybe most importantly, maintained family ties. So let me introduce you to the panelists. First is Patrick Curry. He is president of Fuller Tool Endurance Carbide, a third-generation family-owned business in Saginaw that specializes in the design and production of solid carbide cutting tools and carbide wear parts for a variety of industries. Patrick is a member of the MMA Board of Directors, though most famously known for being the media darling during our campaign to eliminate the industrial personal property tax in 2016. That effort has yielded $2.8 billion in savings for Michigan manufacturers. He was awarded the 2014 John G. Thotis Manufacturer of the Year Award. Our next panelist is Ron Geisman. He is president of Lomar Machine and Tool in Horton, a designer, manufacturer, and integrator of standard and custom machines for hose crimping, tube end forming, tube bending, brazing, leak test systems, and assembly machines. Ron serves on the MMA Service Corp board, and in 2016, he was recognized as the John G. Thotis Manufacturer of the Year. Leading the discussion today will be Vincent Mastrovito, founder and president of Prometheus Partners. Mr. Mastrovito is a certified exit planning advisor, certified business exit consultant, certified value builder, and certified DISC Plus coach. After two decades as a wealth manager, he founded Prometheus Partners to help businesses with exit planning strategies. They are a new endorsed provider for MMA, so MMA members will get a 10% discount for all of the services they offer. With that, let me hand it over to Vincent as he runs the show today. Vincent?
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the introduction. Obviously, Patrick and Ron, thank you very much for being on here. It's great to have really some next generation owners that are part of this discussion. For those that are tuned into the program today, I want to just take a minute and thank all of you for being here today. I think this will be a great discussion that we're going to have today. Certainly, as Mike mentioned, if you have any questions, down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A spot, and go ahead and plug in your questions, and we'll go ahead and get those out to the to the panelists. So as Mike had mentioned, this meeting is really about you, the owners, and really helping to educate and give you information as to how you can better prepare for probably what will be the largest transaction in your lifetime, which is transitioning out of your business or reducing your role inside of the business. Many business owners kind of get a little bit of a misunderstanding about exit planning. It's not really saying, hey, I want to be out at the end of the year within a couple of years. Exit planning is really about preparing you, the owner, and your business for a transition at some point down the road. And certainly the sooner you do that, the easier it becomes, and it keeps you a little bit more in control and helps you to make easier decisions as you go along the way. So with that said, let's go ahead and kind of kick things off with Patrick and Ron. Let's just kind of have a discussion about some of the things that can happen as you go through succession planning, exit planning. They're all kind of lumped into the same area. So Patrick, let me kind of start with you a little bit, and let's talk, certainly as a third generation owner, tell me back when you were, younger, what really attracted you to want to be an owner of a business?
Well, I first started out at Central Michigan University. I was actually not even thinking about getting into the business. I was thinking about being a DNR officer. So I wasn't. But I started my summers working in the shop, on the shop floor, and really, became very interested and fell in love with manufacturing, and just ran various machines throughout the shop. Got involved in engineering, and I just enjoyed the business. So once my dad saw that passion click and my interest in the business, we had started having a few discussions, and just got more and more involved. I switched my major, production management, industrial engineering, and just really started to focus on the business because I really enjoyed it. And I love the people at Fullerton Tool, just enjoyed working with them hand in hand. And then our customer base is phenomenal. So we had great customers, and just getting involved in working with customers, solving problems it's exciting, and that's kind of where I got more involved in the family business. And as you get more involved and work your way up through the business, I definitely wanted to be a part owner. And my dad gifted me shares after a period of time, seeing that I was serious, sticking to the plan, and getting more involved, and eventually we started working on a game plan and transition.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's quite a story, because for those of you that may not have had any transitions, the success rates for family businesses are about 30% from Gen 1 to Gen 2, and to get from Gen 2 to Gen 3 is really less than a 10% success rate across the country. So kudos to you, Patrick, and your family, your father, and everybody at Fullerton Tool to kind of make that transition very successful. That's great. Ron, let's share a little bit about Ron, because you've had a really great path with you and your father. Talk a little bit about your transition, how you became a point like in your life is where you really kind of decided that, hey, I want to be an owner. Because sometimes we don't really think of that as we're younger, but at what point in your life and when your dad started the company did you think about saying, hey, I'd like to be involved and maybe be an owner?
Okay. Yeah, a lot like Patrick. I was in high school when my father started Lomar. And throughout my high school years, looking at the local career center here, I was going to go into electrical program. Dad kind of talked me into moving more towards tool and die precision machining. So I begun that my junior year in high school, and was at that point doing the sweeping, the truck driving, and the basic jobs around Lomar back in those days, and just continued up through the different programs here, learning the machines, learning all the processes. But there again, it was a startup company in those days, and everything was a lot smaller and more direct with the customer than it is nowadays. So, but did come up through, and but just enjoyed all the machining opportunities I had. We then moved into like custom machine building, which in turn gave me the opportunity to get back into the electrical path that I was once looking at. And so it all worked out in the custom machine building. And and just kind of continued to, as the company grew, just continued to grow in the position here. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. You know, as the next generation always takes over, and I'm sure both of you have experienced this to become owners today, what were some of the challenges as you were coming up through the ranks and when you started at the business and really started working there? What do you think were one of the two challenges that really kind of stuck out for you and maybe even for the previous generation when you came in? Why don't you share a little bit about what you went through on that, Ron?
Well, I guess the biggest in those days seemed to be the boss's son. That was a difficult thing to work around and get around. And that was, but you know, as we came up through, you know, that was a major challenge. And then also, you know, you're in your 30s a lot of the time, and you know, raising family. There was a lot of external pulls on the family end of it, and but yet there was quite a commitment on the business end. So so it was you know, just a time commitment to, as we were growing and busy as anything those days. So
Yeah, because you have a pretty substantial family involved inside of your business. So I imagine the dynamics of that is always kind of a moving process, right? Of the communication back and forth, and how can we work together and have that continuity and collaboration as we move forward, right?
correct.
Yeah, yeah. Patrick, share a little bit about some of the challenges you guys may have had as you kind of went through and kind of got to where you are today.
Well, I always go back to a good friend of mine, Scott Shiley. They a family-owned business. He's a second generation, but yeah, the old saying he always says is the first generation employs, the second generation enjoys, and the third generation destroys. But we're doing everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen here in the third generation. So my cousin Matt and I had partnered up, working diligently. And I think the biggest challenge is, you know, from generation to generation, you know, there's so many changes in manufacturing today. The speed of change is escalating before our eyes. So keeping up with those changes has been a huge challenge for us. And then while we were going through that second to third generation, there's just a lot of, you know, traditional family business aspects of any family business that you try to, when you're growing a company and trying to move it into a more professional organization, you know, that transition from, you know, the smaller company to the larger company, still trying to keep that family feel. The Fullerton family is very important to us, yet trying to be extremely professional and, you know, have your customers realize that this small family-owned company is big enough to support your biggest need, but also small and flexible enough to react and take care of you. So that's been the biggest challenge for us, is the speed of change in technology, keeping up with it, making sure we continue to reinvest in the company, because it's a highly, you know, like most competitive, you know, advanced manufacturing, it's very capital intense, right? So that transition was critical for us to, you know, be able to have it worked out to where we can still reinvest in our people, reinvest in technology, and even look to expand and acquire companies or in acquisitions too. So that was the biggest blessing I think we had from second to third generation, is that understanding that, you know, my dad, my uncle could see the passion in my cousin and I, and realize that we want to continue to grow the company, and they wanted to help us be successful. So they didn't want to, you know, burden us with a huge payment. I mean, they got paid well, don't get me wrong, and we're still paying them, but they know that we need to work out a deal where it could be where we can still invest in our people and our company.
Yeah, I think you raised some great points. I think one of them is, you know, you still are going to have holidays and family get-togethers outside of the business, right? And how do we kind of keep the business on the professional level, but still have fun? Because you were all kids at one point. Now, obviously, you're adult professionals and owners, and how do we keep this thing moving, right? And that's always it can always be somewhat of a delicate balance in between, but certainly something that has to be addressed. And how to structure family meetings and what do those things look like as we go through. So we have a question from the group that I thought was a great question. Based on your personal experiences with moving from the previous generation to your own, where you are today, what lessons have you learned that will make the next generation seamless in growing the business to the next level? Either one of you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson I learned is, you know, and Ron and I are both in a Vistage tech group, and we kind of use that group as an advisory board. But the biggest lesson I think for me is just trying to make sure you utilize the either a round table of executive group or, you know, advisory board, or just some good close colleagues that you can bounce ideas off of, and then share best practices too, right? Because, you know, we don't have all the answers. We're always striving to improve our business and our company and being a great place to work and our culture. And, you know, we're not afraid to copy other people's great ideas because there's a lot of good ones out there, but you've got to be humble and search knowledge and never stop learning. So my suggestion is go out and, you know, join a Vistage group, you know, a executive roundtable group. There's family business networks. There's all kinds of opportunities to gain knowledge and work with consultants that, you know, can help you grow your business and help you grow yourself too. So.
Yeah. Ron, do you have anything you'd like to share with the group?
No, as Patrick said, if you can surround yourself with good people, but the main thing is to constantly be looking out 10 years at a, you know, a plan ahead and always be working towards that. It seems to be, but, and, you know, but you like Patrick said, you got to be understanding the methods of today and what everyone around you is doing too, to keep you competitive and at the front of the market. And
yeah, it's really important. Certainly the longer the runway, the easier it is to challenge and to get there, and to kind of create that checklist of things that you need to be doing in smaller amounts all the time to create that better culture. You know, culture is such a dynamic and important piece, right, for family businesses, but for all businesses, right? Because really, I think we could all agree that family businesses or privately held businesses are family businesses, whether it's going to the next generation or not. It's still a family-owned business, and it's going to provide for the family, whether there's children or grandchildren within that family that are going to take it over. So there's still a dynamic there that we really need to take a look at. Let's talk a little bit about how that dynamic really works in culture. Ron, when you came into the business and you started taking a look at it, obviously, you know, your dad started the business and the people that he recruited in that business were probably along the same age bracket as what your father was at that particular time, right? So when you're coming in, I know you mentioned something along those lines as, okay, your dad's kid and he's coming in and, okay, what's this kid going to do when he comes in? How did you feel that the transition of when you aligned, or how your father may have aligned that with that generation of employees that he had? Talk to us about some of the successes and challenges that you kind of went through during that process.
well, I guess some of the bigger ones is my father was a great leader, and he was able to, you know, train people real well. And when he started the business, he was in his 30s, relatively young himself, and, you know, jumped in. He did surround himself with some 30-year-olds, but he was capturing a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds too when he started out. And that generation is just leaving us at this time. They're moving into the retirement stages. So, but there is, you know, there was quite a young group. There was a lot of culture built around maybe, I don't know if you want to say shop parties, but get-togethers. I mean, Friday nights would end with, a get-together, most generally every week, and that was the nature of a 15 to 30 person shop in those days. So, and we've no doubt lost some of that, that style of close-knit culture. But we're still growing, where we can and as we can going forward.
Yeah, awesome. Patrick, let's take that question just a little bit further, if you don't mind. How do you think transitioning to the culture when you started, or maybe even if you saw a little bit of when your dad came in, or the second generation, to where you are now, how do you see the dynamic of that happening from before to today? Are there some similarities? Are there completely different ways that you really look to approach that?
Well, going back to that question and the question before, even another lesson learned is that transition. Like my grandfather didn't communicate the game plan at all. Had his will set. Everybody, just here's what it was. They find out after the fact, and he passed away way too young at 67 in 1977 when I was 7. So my dad, my uncle were following that same path. They're of that generation where they didn't tell their wives what the plan was. They didn't communicate. And I had to push the issue like, hey, we got to communicate here. You guys have to talk to. I wanted my mom to be in the meetings. I wanted my aunt to be in the meetings. So they were fully vested in the process too. So I think the communication, you have that generation of my dad, my uncle that, didn't want to tell the wives and the family what the plan was. And I was pushing them to tell them what the plan was. So for me, that cultural shift from generation to generation is just more communication, more openness as a culture for Fullerton. So we like to share more information with our workforce and the companies, Endurance Carbide as well, and just make sure there's some transparency. And that's been probably the biggest shift. But we like there's a lot of great tradition, a lot of great foundation that my dad, my uncle, and my grandfather established here. And we want to continue those phenomenal, great traditions and keep those positive successes rolling forward and keep them ingrained in our fiber, right? So we want to keep that going, but we just want to infuse it with, some of the, just more communicative on your core values, on the culture, and just better communication, I think, is the biggest shift for us as a culture.
Yeah. It's always it's always a challenge going from one generation to the next, and then certainly you have the dynamics of the workforce within inside of your business. How do you align those two, and how do you bring children up through the business without kind of giving them the so-called front office job right from the beginning, right? I know, Ron, you shared, you're basically kind of pushing a broom, so to speak. You work in the back, and I'm sure, Patrick, you did a lot of that work when you came in there to show the other people that, hey, you're going to start at the bottom and work your way up. And certainly you took your college educations and kind of, catapulted that up and really spent the time and the dedication to kind of get where you're at. What would you share with people? A great question that's out there from the group is certainly there's a company that certainly very successful. They continue to grow through the pandemic. They're into the 4th generation, but dad and uncle talk about selling the company, and they want to keep the company with the children and the grandchildren. What advice would you maybe or direction you would point a company like that or people like that are really trying to keep the business, where maybe the owners of maybe the majority of the owners of the company are saying, well, maybe we should do X, Y, or Z? Any words of wisdom you might share with them, Ron or Pat?
It seems like currently there's a great deal of push from external sources to, making offers all the time through emails, letters, and various things. More so than there was 10 years ago, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think, the pandemic was tough. I mean, it was rough. And I think there's a lot of people that had never considered selling are probably are looking at it. I mean, and that's and I think as we come through this, that's one of the things that you're continually working on is your employees, keeping them intact, and the business coming in and all the different things. And like I said, it is rough. There's a lot of push externally to selling, but I guess if, as always, you want to stay on the course, and it'll but I guess this was definitely a good test this last year and a half out there. So
Yeah. Patrick, you have any insight or input you'd like to give on that?
I agree with Ron. Like Ron, same thing. Like they call me the SOB, son of boss, and you everybody says, you got it easy, you got a family business, you just step right into. Well, like Ron, we're always on interview, right? I mean, we're in an interview and internally with all of our people. They're always looking to see how we lead and how we set the tone and set the example, and our attitude and our positive movement forward, right? Individually as well as the company. We're on interview with all of our customers. The customers are looking at us as a family company. Ron, you're in charge. I'm in charge. What are you guys doing to get better as a company and individually? So we're constantly under the microscope, which is, you wouldn't be in a position if you couldn't handle it. So it's not a big deal, but it's still challenging. And then last year's challenge of protecting your people through COVID and making sure you're doing all the right things to protect your staff and your company and your family was very challenging. And then keeping the doors open, right? I mean, we all took major hits and revenue, and it was extremely challenging. And now we're seeing the other part of that challenge. Like Ron, we have an older staff too, and more people today are more apt to retiring. Their 401ks are looking good. The market's been phenomenal, and come retirement age, they're out the door. I mean, and with very little time to replace them with good training. So you've got the hockey stick curve going up on new business, and our people are struggling getting it out the door, working diligently to make that happen, and yet they're trying to train that next younger group at the same time. So training these younger people to step it up, and then still trying to get product out the door, it's extremely challenging. So I know Ron's faced a similar situation. So
Yeah.
I would one of the things that I think Ron and I both got to see, we were at the Bavarian Inn, and Amy Grassi and Bill Zender spoke, and they started what was called a family creed. And I got a copy of it. I don't know if you got a copy, Ron, but I'm planning on copying that and Fullertonizing it. And they have stuff like family member must work 3 years out of the business before coming into the business, 3 to 5 years. That's a great idea. I mean, you feel like you can bring something to the company, right? You've got some outside experience you can bring to the table, and just some other criteria for the family. So now HR understands, here's the creed, here's our agreed upon program for the in-family members that are in the business. So that type of detail, I think, is important to really think about, to put in place. And I think it really helps you as an organization, because you can't have a family member not holding up their end of the bargain, and they've got to be the right person in the right seat, and they've got to get it right. They've got to have the capacity to do that job. They've got to want to do that job, and they've got to be able to perform. And if they can't at that level, then it's just not good for your company culture. So holding your family members to as high a level as you hold any other employee is important. I think very important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Let's kind of stay for just a little bit on the next generation and the younger people. Certainly, there seems to be, especially in manufacturing, a huge challenge of bringing in young talent. Right, there's not as many vocational education places out there, and working people into manufacturing from high school and working and coming into the manufacturing area. And then certainly if you have children or grandchildren or other family members that are looking for professions? Like, do they want to be in the business with some of the other opportunities that they may have out there in the universe? How do you motivate them, or how do you attract them to want to be in the business, to be there and move through, kind of like what you did during your periods of time?
Well, for me, just getting involved in your local manufacturer association. I served on the board, was president for a while, involved in the Michigan Manufacturer Association. So trying to get exposure for your company and get involved in FIRST robotics programs at the high schools to the CTE programs locally. I know Ron's a big proponent of that as well. So having all those connections pay dividends, right? They know who we are. You do job shadows, and try to make your company cool, right? We're in manufacturing. It's not the easiest thing to do. So,
Right.
Just trying to really get that the word out there and get your brand out there, get your name, get involved, sponsor those different programs at the university. We do capstone projects with the engineering teams, and they've been phenomenal. We've actually got a lot of great product out of there, and then we get exposed to some great young engineers at Saginaw Valley State University. We work with Delta College in their program. We have a accredited journeyman's program that we customize for our people, and then we just don't hire them right away. We help them continue that education. I think that's important because these institutions need the funding, right? They need people to go through the class to have the class. So we help support them to continue that education while they come to work and finish their journeyman's program and get their accreditation. And then just getting involved in the high schools and the FIRST robotic programs, I think, is very important.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. When you guys both came into the business, obviously the previous generation there, your fathers or your uncles and whomever were still kind of at the helm. Every situation is a little different. And I know, Patrick, you shared you guys really started wanting to increase the communication with your dad and get your mom involved in the meeting and things of that nature. When he really started moving stock over to you guys, whether it's a gift or a sell, how long was he really active in the business? So was there kind of a written plan for you to hit certain marks in order for them to back their way out of the company? Or did they just kind of stay on because they felt it was like that's what they really enjoyed doing every single day?
For me, it was my dad and my uncle. My dad was a president since '73. And then I became president in 2008. And that was a funny story. I had to speak at a mold and die event. And the sales manager at the time, Dick Terry, said, hey, my Uncle Morgan, I think it would be better if Pat was the president because it would sound better for this big presentation that the president's coming to speak from Fullerton. So my uncle goes, yeah, that's a good idea. So that afternoon, I had cards printed and I became the president of Fullerton Tool. So there was no formal passing of the torch. And then I just started, doing more and more of the presidential, always, getting his advice and coaching and he was a great leader and very good president for the company. It took us in a really good direction. And so I always, tapped into my dad's knowledge. They both have their skills and weaknesses, right? And so just utilizing them while they were still working. My dad still oversees what we call the Hall of Fame room, because it's not his office, but he comes in and makes sure it's in good order occasionally. But my uncle just loved coming into work. He loved going to the shows still. So he went to a lot of the tool shows because it really fired him up, and he loved talking to longtime friends and colleagues and customers. So I think it's good that they continue to be involved. The more you can earn the faith and trust is obviously they're still majority owners, right? So when it comes to a big decision, they're still going to say yay or nay, but you want to continue to earn that trust and respect to take over. And I think it's a process. I think it's something you have to work with them and gain that trust and and it's all about communication, making sure they're in
Yeah.
the loop on big decisions.
Ron, how would you view the fact, or how important do you think it really is for the, like in your case, your father, to be mentoring and kind of coaching along the way, right? This is, like Patrick said, this is a long process to start a company and run it, right? And to bring family into it, there's a lot of like finding like, what is your right seat? What is Patrick's right seat in the company, right? So it's the right person in the right seat. And sometimes the next generation, if it's family, is not meant to be in that president or CEO role sometimes, or there has to be a joint venture, just depending on the size and the makeup of the strengths of that, right? So how do you view the importance of mentoring and coaching from previous generations to new generations in transitioning?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely the key. And if you're lucky enough to have the time to do this transition slow, it works out great. I mean, I feel like to this day, I'm still in transition from dad being the president to myself being a president. And
Yeah.
dad still, it's not 5 days a week and it's not 8 hours a day, but 3 to 4 days a week he's in for a few hours. He enjoys that, walks around, talks to a number of the employees, and then takes off early. So that's just, he enjoys the to interaction with the employees out there. And he's there. I mean, if I have an issue or question or anything, I can find him and get that answered. So like I said, we're still in transition, and I think if you're lucky enough to have the ability to make this take 10 years or 20 years or whatever it may be, is great. And that's it's a good way to go.
Yeah, yeah, it's always that, and I think it's been said at least a couple times today, and hopefully the attendees listening, is the longer the runway you have, the better off that you are. Meaning starting sooner. I'll kind of summarize. Starting sooner is always better, and really starting to kind of really chip away at it. What was the feeling, Patrick and Ron? And maybe it's just a flat out, it wasn't a consideration. Was there any consideration of having non-family members owning stock in your company?
For us, it wasn't, just because I think it gets very complex. And so we decided to keep it within just my cousin and I, which is a lot more manageable that way. And then, take care of our parents, to be able to pass it on to the rest of the siblings if they wish. And I've flat out told my dad, don't put me in on for anything. I'm buying the business out and I don't need anything. I mean, just take care of the rest of the siblings if something happens to you at some point. So I think it's important to honor your parents and take care of your parents, and then if they, to me, I think you get very complicated when you start dividing the shares. And what's a share worth if you don't have majority ownership? So you got stock and the company sells. If it sells, or you keep it in the family, I mean, you can live a long time and not get anything. So I don't know. I think it's gets very complicated when you start dividing up the shares, especially to those that don't work in the business. I think they should be involved in the business, and again, the right seat, right person, the right seat. So if they're not suitable or not interested, don't have the capacity or don't want that position, then obviously you've got to put a professional in that position.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's it's always a interesting and challenging dynamic once you choose to give stock of a family-owned business to a non-family member. Right now, they're a partner with you, and you're kind of married at the hip, so to speak. And certainly, that's a huge decision that anyone would have to make, if you go down that road, right? I don't think, Ron, you would probably echo the same that Patrick is saying, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
Same way.
Yeah. If you want to keep it a family, certainly if there are no children that are there, well, let me just kind of back up a little. There's some other ways that you can generate, loyalty to non-family members, whether it's phantom stock or do other things that drive value inside of a business that kind of retain and keep those key people and kind of help. They participate in the equity of the business, but they don't physically own stock of the company, right? So there's other things that you can do, to kind of keep that going. And certainly if the kids, there was a question like if the next generation really isn't interested, and depending on the size of the company and the complexity, would you have it professionally managed or offer equity to a non-family member? So if there were no kids coming in down the road, certainly I guess your choices are either to sell it, depending on what you could get for the price, and is that enough money for you to transition out? That obviously is one option. Or you could create, certainly a board of directors of any size and have it professionally managed, bring in a president or CEO to run the company and just kind of wind yourself out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, if when that time comes and you don't have a family member stepping up or to take on that next position, professional position, and getting creative on compensation package and performance bonuses, I think is imperative to get the right talent. You have to be creative on that.
There's a lot of talk now, in the world today, businesses, of how do you really gauge and measure people's successes? How do you measure your own success? How do you measure the company's success? And then certainly you've got your next generation, you've got your leadership team. So let's just talk about it in whole. Do both of you, or do either of you, use key performance indicators in your business? If you do, or either way, share how you're using them and how that's really helped you to bring the team together and really drive more value inside of the business, and how that helps to create some continuity and accountability in there.
We do a lot of key indicators throughout the EOS process that we're currently running. And it is, anything from the most obvious is, monthly sales and the different things of that nature, whether it be intake or shipments. We track all of those, late deliveries. And most decisions are based upon, what they are showing us going into it. So pretty important, and it is a major thing but along with it, the housekeeping of keeping those numbers real, and that's always an issue, and making sure that they're good, true numbers, and especially like delivery and some of those that have a tendency to, maybe if someone isn't watching them constantly, they can get out, quickly get off, but the reviewing these key indicators, you have the opportunity to bring them back on track and see that they're going off track too. So
yeah. Patrick?
Yeah, we like Ron, we started EOS in all the companies, and I would 100% say that the transition, working with my new business partner, my cousin, without EOS and a firm strategic system in place, I think we would have failed miserably. So the EOS system has been a godsend for us because it's just a really good way to run your business. The scorecard is reviewed with good key indicators that drive our business, and I think we meet once a week at the level 10 meeting, go over the scorecard, go over the numbers, and they definitely pop. And when there's issues arising, we discuss them, try to dig into them and solve them, and make the appropriate changes. So it's been a great system for us to run the business. Developed right in Michigan from Gino Wickman and Livonia. And I'll tell you what, it's unbelievable. Ron, I think in our tech group, majority of people are running the EOS system, which is probably 14 or 15 different companies. And then it's unbelievable how many people are actually running. Small businesses, family-owned businesses are running that business system to run their strategic planning and their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Ron. Go right ahead.
I just saying that system or one that mirrors it. I mean, there are a few that are running, some that they've pretty much made themselves. But if you stand back and look at them, they do run next to each other and pretty mirror each other all the way through. So
yeah. So it's really important to certainly utilize key performance indicators for different departments within there. As Patrick and Ron both expressed, it gives you a benchmark and understand on a monthly basis where people stand, and it allows the team and you as an owner to use that opportunity to help mentor and coach these people to become better at what they do. Some people are good leaders, and to help make them become great leaders on the leadership team and whatnot, spending that time and talking to them, I think, would really be a prudent way to kind of keep moving them to the next level and really kind of challenging them to push themselves to really get there. And I think that's what a lot of younger people certainly want today, is they want to be challenged and give me something that has some substance behind it, what it is, right? Would you gentlemen both agree with that, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vincent, I think they crave the challenge, and you always want to challenge your team and your leadership team to always improve individually, but also improve their teams underneath them too. So that's probably the biggest joy I get out of what I've seen just in the last year, is just that the old delegate to elevate, but just to see not just the directs management team that I work with, but then the people underneath them, they've all stepped up and improved over this last year and all the challenges we've had. And to me, that's, I can sleep really good at night knowing that they're constantly trying to get better and improve.
Yeah. So you both have leadership teams in your companies that I'm aware of. And I think you both have advisory boards within your companies, I believe, right? Don't you, Patrick, also?
My advisory, it's a smaller group that we work with, my cousin and I. And
Okay.
then I also have the Vistage Tech group that I belong to that I utilize in that aspect as well.
Yeah. So when you take a look at the leadership team, which are usually people inside of your business, let's talk a little bit about that, because that in itself is its own dynamic of like who actually should be on that leadership team, and how do you as an owner really kind of choose or decide like who should really be on that and in the evaluations. Let's talk a little bit for a few minutes here about some of the processes and successes and or challenges that you maybe went through, putting people on a leadership team that, hey, these people really excelled, or maybe this wasn't fit for them, and kind of how that played out. So anything you want to share with that, Patrick? Because that could be a pretty long dynamic all in itself.
I think you hire your weakness. I've got a lot of weaknesses, so it's pretty easy for me to pick the right people, because I hired a really good operations guy, VP of manufacturing, is Gary Bruff. He does a phenomenal job, but he's a detail oriented guy. He's very well organized. I mean, that's the opposite of me, right? I'm not into the details as much as I should be. And I trust him to make sure that the process is sound and following up and making sure it's working. And he does a great job with that. He's a Six Sigma lean guy, just phenomenal leader. And then my CFO does a great job too. Really understands the numbers, crunching the numbers, and just getting those pieces that complement each other, challenge each other. They have strengths and weaknesses. We all complement each other. And the biggest thing that we did, which was a godsend too, is we hired a HR manager, which took a lengthy process in the research and interview process. We hired a consultant help us with that. And we really got a great addition to our team. Katie's been phenomenal in HR. And I'll tell you what, I think every HR issue or challenge you could ever imagine happened over the last year through this pandemic. So we're so thankful to have a professional HR on our staff and in our management team too. So, and then on the sales side, that's my cousin's passion. So he's taken over as a VP of sales and marketing. He loves marketing. He loves selling. He's very passionate about it. He's very good at it. So I think it's important to have that sales side of it too. And we have a director of sales that works really well with the team. And I think everybody, the key is getting them to challenge each other, yet be respectful and work together and help each other succeed.
Yeah, and it's also how do they lead, right? So like you said, they're respecting kind of other people's space and how they move through things and whatnot. Ron, tell us a little bit about your leadership team and kind of some of the things you guys are working on.
Well, our team is still building. There's a number of young people on the leadership team that are there to learn, and we're still building that, and we're still building the leadership structure around us. And I guess as Kate, I hate to keep going back to COVID, but it did, like Patrick said, it challenges every aspect over this last year, including the leadership team. We ended up with some long-term employees that decided to go down the retirement road at, like pretty much that wasn't even being talked about pre-COVID. And throughout that, they decided to, go ahead and get into the retirement. So it kind of changed our leadership around here, and we're still building back from the losses that we hit there. So
yeah, the last 12 months or so have really created some challenges, I think, for all companies, especially in the manufacturing area where people have to be there to run the machinery, right? It makes it a much more challenging process that they cannot do remotely. You physically have to be in front of the machine. And, kudos to you and all of those that, came through this, in a much better position or even in survival and are moving forward. We're getting down to the last 5 minutes. I wanted to just kind of let the group know that's listening out there. If you have any additional questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A section of the meeting here, and we'll go ahead and get those out. We do have another question here. Any suggestions for methods to get the next? Oops, excuse me. How did you find the right roundtable to participate in? Or is it several?
No, I do serve on a lot of boards because I love serving on, manufacturing boards because it's like-minded manufacturers, but they're very passionate about what they do. So I gain a lot of knowledge in that network too. But I think that Vistage, they kind of found me, right? A friend of mine, Jim Terry, kind of introduced me to it. And then you basically, you sit down one-to-one with the chair of that Vistage group, and we had a good meeting. Then I actually participated in one of their meetings and decided to join. And from that, my CFO is actually in a junior group in Vistage, which has been a great resource for him. My HR manager is in SHRM, so she's got a bunch of colleagues locally that she integrate, just making sure your management team has those outside resources to tap into, I think is imperative. So I just recently have my VP of manufacturing meeting with another local operations VP of manufacturing for another company, trying to make sure that he has that resource for one-to-one meetings and personal development, and then best practice ideas that you can exchange with each other. So I would promote Vistage. I think it's a great organization if anybody's interested. I think they do speakers once a month. We do our monthly summaries, go over our company issues, big time issues that we're dealing with. And I think it's been a great organization. And actually we had a good speaker in Vincent, came and spoke at one of our monthly meetings, which was outstanding. Vincent does a great job speaking. And actually we pulled you in last year at at a speaking engagement kind of last second for the GLBMA, and you hit it out of the park then too, Vincent. So
Thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Really appreciate that. Yeah, we enjoy doing that. Brian, do you have anything else that you'd like to share?
I do. I gained a lot from the Vistage. I'm in, a few local, JAMA. There's a TANA group that's currently, that was started from the state came out with like a tool and die renaissance groups back in the like 2010 area. We since joined that. And the tax benefits that was started from it have passed. And now it's just the group decided to stay together. But it's what I gained from that group is it's predominantly manufacturers, whereas the Vistage group is an array of everything. I mean, it's quite a broader range. So you get a little bit more non-manufacturing information along with the manufacturing with the Vistage group. So
yeah, I think it's great because you can share ideas amongst other owners that have like kind challenges and successes to really kind of move things forward. And I think, both of you had said, it's not only about the owner getting, kind of sharpening their saw and staying sharp. It's also about your leadership team and your people at the company and making sure that you keep them educated and at the cutting edge of whatever department or division that they are running, whether it's HR, operations, or sales, or customer service, whatever it is. If there's other things that they can be doing that you can help them get better at what they do, it's going to help the company, long term. So we're kind of at the end of where we're at today. We've got about 2 minutes left. So is there any closing remarks, Patrick or Ron, that you would like to share with the group before we turn it back over to Mike?
No, I just think family business is challenging, but it's rewarding just the same too, especially in a smaller business. I think you can see the results of your efforts, and then that teamwork is so much, it's just fun, right? So it's just a great time to, work together to get things done. And I think family businesses are great, and people should consider them as an opportunity to go work at them, because there's a lot of great family businesses in the great state of Michigan, and hopefully more and more people consider that as an option, because some of these younger people like to go for these bigger companies, and I just think family businesses are in the culture. There's a lot of great companies all in the state, so
yeah,
hopefully more people consider working at them.
Absolutely. So well, we're going to turn it back over to Mike. We want to thank everybody who attended today. Hopefully that there was some great information. These two gentlemen are very successful, shared a lot of their great history and experiences and information. So hopefully you got a lot out of that. And Mike, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Great, Vincent. Thank you to you, and a great job in hosting this effort. Patrick Curry and Ron Geisman, great discussion. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your experiences. I thought it was just a great discussion today. And I want to thank all the participants today for participating in this event, and hope you found value in it. As I said at the beginning, the presentation was recorded and be sent to you within 24 hours and available on the MMA website. I also remind you that to attend the 2021 Manufacturing Operations Conference, which is being held next week, that Wednesday, May 19th from 1 to 4. It's both an in-person and a live stream event. We'll have nearly a dozen manufacturers and professionals helping tackle some of the biggest challenges facing manufacturing industry, including talent, Industry 4.0, and many other issues. So you can find more information on our website, mimfg.org. And with that, I'll thank you all again for participating, and thank our great experts, and look forward to more webinar information from MMA. With that, I'll bang the gavel and sign off. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.